I shouldn't have touched her door. But the truth, I wanted to know how it would feel to open something that was never mine. It started with a sound, a slow, deliberate click like a lock whispering, yes. You'd think a man would know better, that he'd feel the weight of the moment pressing into his chest like guilt. But I didn't feel guilty. Not then. I felt alive. Like I'd stepped through some invisible veil and into something I couldn't unsee or undo. My name's Caleb. I'm 26. Grew up outside Columbus, Ohio, trailer park, quiet church on Sundays, and a father who loved two things more than his family: Crown Royal and control. I left at 17 with a toolbox and a half-finished GED. The rest I built with my hands. Now I run my own repair business, Caleb's Fix It Right. I go where the work is: loose cabinets, busted pipes, broken locks, parts if I'm not careful. That morning was nothing special. Just a job alert on my phone: new request. Lock replacements, front and to interior. High priority. Generous tip. The address: Lakehurst Grove. That part of town where the hedges are trimmed like sculptures and even the trash bins seem to shimmer. I pulled up around 10. Pale sunshine filtered through the oaks. The house was all glass and cedar framed like a designer's fantasy clean minimalist money. A porch that looked like no one had ever dared wipe their shoes on it. I rang the bell, and the door opened like a secret. She stood there in soft beige leggings and a black cropped cardigan that tied delicately under her chest. Her skin like the inside of a peach, warm and golden and untouched by anything harsh. Her hair was the kind of brown that held light like honey poured over silk tied up in a messy knot that somehow made the curve of her neck look like something sacred. Caleb. She asked, her voice smooth like heat rising from pavement. Yes, ma'am. I nodded, suddenly aware of every patch of dust on my shirt. I'm Emerson, she said. Come in. The doors are waiting. She walked ahead without looking back, barefoot on warm wood floors. Each step quiet, like the house breathed only when she let it. I followed, trying not to stare but catching glimpses the way the fabric clung to her hips, the faint curve of her lower back. When she bent to point at the faulty lock, the front deadbolt was loose. Her words drifted back like petals. It never quite clicks anymore. She chuckled when she said it, and I swear something flickered in the air between us, thin, unspoken. The two interior doors she wanted fixed were in the hallway. One led to what looked like a reading room. The other, I guessed, to a bedroom. That door was closed. I had a scare, she said, brushing imaginary dust from the counter. Someone tried the handle late one night while I was in bed. I didn't sleep much after that. I nodded, keeping my voice steady. We'll get it secure, I promise. She smiled like she'd heard that line before from someone who didn't mean it. I got to work. Tools laid out, screws sorted, old hardware removed. She moved in and out of the rooms with the kind of rhythm dancers wish they had. Not hurried, not rehearsed. Just hers. She made coffee at some point. The scent of roasted almond and cinnamon filled the space. Her voice drifted through a phone call in the next room, low, firm, amused. At one point, she laughed. Not loud. Just enough to curl itself around your spine and settle in your chest. 2 hours later, I was done. Locks tight, handles, smooth, keys new. I found her in the kitchen. She was leaning over the island, flipping through a real estate magazine. Her cardigan had slipped slightly off one shoulder, exposing a freckle on her collarbone that made my breath catch. All set, I said, holding up the keys. She looked up, met my eyes. Thank you, Caleb. I already feel safer. She walked around the counter slowly. No rush. I pulled out the invoice from my back pocket. She didn't take it, just stared at me. Not in a weird way, not flirty, just still. And then she said it. Maybe you should keep a copy of the key. The world stopped for a second. I'm sorry, I asked, voice not as steady as I wanted. In case I'm not home. Or in case I am, she said, brushing her fingers along the countertop. Then before I could answer, she stepped closer. So close I could smell her skin like warm vanilla and faint smoke. She reached into the bowl of keys on the counter, plucked one and slid it gently into my work pants pocket, so slowly it felt like my body had forgotten how to breathe. And then she turned and walked away. Just like that. Not a word more, no wink, no joke. Just vanished into the soft hush of the hallway, leaving the echo of heat in her wake. I left 5 minutes later, hands shaking as I packed up. every part of me buzzing, unsure if I'd just imagined it. Driving home, I kept one hand on the wheel and the other near that pocket. The key felt heavy. Too heavy for aluminum. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat in bed staring at it on my nightstand, gleaming in the half-dark. Her scent was still on my shirt. My hands still remembered the silk of her voice. I told myself it was a power move, some flirty trick she'd pulled on handymen before. But deep down, I already knew this was the start of something I wouldn't be able to control, and I hadn't even touched the bedroom door yet. I told myself to forget the key, told myself she was just being eccentric. Some wealthy, lonely woman who liked a little drama. Maybe it made her days more interesting. Maybe I was just one of many repair guys who walked out of her house rattled and half drunk on the scent of her lotion. But that night I didn't sleep. I lay on my back, arms folded, staring at the ceiling while the key sat on the table like a loaded gun. By morning, I'd shoved it in a drawer and slammed it shut like that could erase the memory of her fingers sliding into my pocket. But it didn't. Nothing did. I tried getting back to normal. The next few days were a blur of drywall patches, squeaky hinges, and dripping faucets. I replaced a cracked mirror for a dentist's office, fixed a misaligned door at a bakery where the owner slipped me an extra muffin with a shy smile. But I wasn't really there. In my mind, I was still standing in her hallway, still feeling the ghost of her breath near my neck, still wondering what that locked bedroom door looked like on the inside. I told no one. Not Kyle, my best friend since high school. Not my dad, who'd lecture me about keeping your tools in your pants. Not even myself, really. I just kept moving. Until one afternoon 5 days later, I found myself parked in a grocery store lot staring at her name in my phone. Emerson, saved simply as E-Key because I couldn't bring myself to type her full name. It felt too personal, too intimate, like it was mine. I tapped out a message before I could stop myself. Just checking, how are the locks holding up? The reply came back less than a minute later. Perfect. I was starting to think you weren't going to text. That did something to me. Something electric. I wasn't sure if I typed. 3 dots appeared. Then why not come by, no emoji, no explanation, just a door cracking open again. I should have said no. I didn't. I drove. My truck rolled into that quiet neighborhood like a secret. The oaks lining the drive whispered things I didn't want to hear. I saw her house before I saw her, lights warm inside the sun, barely setting, casting gold across her windows. I walked to the porch, heart hammering, key in hand, but I didn't use it. I rang the bell. She opened the door wearing loose jeans and a soft charcoal gray sweater that hung off one shoulder like it couldn't bear to be apart from her skin. Her hair was down this time, long tousled waves that looked like they'd just been tangled by a lover's hands. "Didn't think you'd come," she said, smiling like she already knew I would. I cleared my throat. "I needed to ask you something." She stepped aside. "Then come in and ask." Inside, it smelled like cedar wood and something sweet like honey melting on warm tiles. The lights were low. The kitchen island gleamed. There were 2 wine glasses already set out like she'd been expecting me since noon. We sat, talked. Nothing heavy at first. Weather, work. She asked about my craziest client stories, and I told her about the guy who tried to pay me in scratch-off lottery tickets. She laughed rich and low, sipping her wine, slowly, her fingers dancing along the rim of the glass. But I couldn't keep pretending. I leaned forward. "Why did you give me that key, Emerson?" She didn't blink. "I liked the way you looked at me." I blinked instead. "How's that?" "Like you weren't sure if you should," she said softly, voice barely above the hum of the jazz playing from invisible speakers. Like I was something fragile or dangerous. I didn't know what to say. "You didn't use it." She added, eyes locked on mine. "I couldn't," I said. She smiled, and it wasn't playful this time. It was real. "That says something about you." We sat like that for a long while, talking, drinking. Then slowly the edges of conversation frayed. She moved to the couch, motioned me over. We sat closer than before. Her knee brushed mine. Her perfume soft, musky, with a hint of something floral curled around me like silk. "I don't usually let people in," she whispered. "Not like this." "I'm not sure what this is," I said honestly. She turned her eyes, tracing my face like a map. "Neither am I." Then silence, and in that silence, her hand brushed against mine. Not accidentally. Slowly. Deliberately. The kind of touch that carried questions, promises, warnings. I should have gotten up, should have left, but I didn't. Instead, I reached for her hand, held it. Her fingers curled into mine like they'd been waiting there all along. No words, no permission, just heat. We leaned toward each other like two magnets that had spent too long apart, and when our lips met, it wasn't fireworks or music swelling. It was slow and quiet, like a door finally unlocking from the inside. We kissed until the space between us disappeared, until I forgot where my skin ended and hers began. Her body was soft, warm, impossibly close. Her sweater slipped off her shoulder, revealing more than skin, revealing vulnerability, intent. My hands moved without thinking, tracing the arch of her back, the dip of her waist. Her breath hitched and mine followed. We moved carefully, like exploring an unfamiliar room in the dark, each touch, deliberate, slow, reverent. But just before anything more could happen, she pulled back, eyes wide, chest rising, and whispered, "We can't." Why not? Because... "You'll want more." I didn't answer. I didn't know how. She stood, wrapped herself in the silence, and walked toward the hallway. Her voice came back over her shoulder, "Good night, Caleb." And I was left there, alone, heart pounding, wanting something I didn't understand yet, something I wasn't sure I could handle, but knew I couldn't walk away from now. I didn't sleep that night. Again. The moment I walked out of her house, the air felt colder, thinner, like I'd left something behind I didn't mean to. Something I wasn't going to get back. Her words kept circling my brain like a loop I couldn't shut off. "You'll want more." She said it like a warning, like she already knew what came next, like she'd seen it happen before to someone else who walked in with a toolbox and left carrying too much. The next morning, I stood in front of the drawer where the key was. I didn't open it, didn't need to. I could feel it, still warm from memory, still humming with the tension of things not said. Work didn't help. I replaced the baseboards in a nursery for a young couple, installed a new ceiling fan in a room that smelled like peanut butter and crayons. Every time I bent down to reach for a screw or measure a frame, I saw her. The way she'd stood barefoot in that hallway, the soft curve of her shoulder under that falling sweater, the whisper of her voice just before she walked away. I told myself I wouldn't reach out, that I needed space. But 3 days later, I found myself back at that drawer, thumb hovering over the edge, heart skipping. I opened it, took the key out, held it like it might burn me. That night, I didn't text, didn't call, but I drove. Her house looked the same from the outside, clean, composed, unaware of the chaos it had left in me. I sat in my truck for 10 minutes, 20. The lights were on, a single lamp glowing through the living room window. I almost left. But then I saw her, silhouetted in the window, alone. She didn't look up. I rang the bell. She opened the door like she was expecting someone else. Her expression flickered when she saw me, half surprise, half something deeper. A slow smile followed. "You came," she said. I nodded, suddenly feeling every second of the past few days pressing down on my shoulders. I couldn't stay away. She stepped aside. "Then don't." That night didn't feel like a repeat. It felt like crossing a threshold we'd both been standing on for too long. She wore something different this time, dark green silk that clung to her body like a secret. It shimmered with each step, catching the light in ways I couldn't unsee. She moved like water fluid, deliberate, powerful, without effort. We drank wine again, but it wasn't about the wine. It was about what we weren't saying, about what we were both already doing with our eyes, our hands, our silence. She leaned in close as I laughed at some stupid story. Her lips barely touched my jaw when she smiled. Her fingers grazed my arm as she stood to refill our glasses. Everything was slow, intentional, dripping with suggestion so thick I felt soaked in it. I reached for her hand when she returned. She let me, and then she kissed me first. Soft, careful, like a promise she hadn't meant to make but couldn't take back. And then she kissed me again, harder, like she didn't care about the consequences. Our bodies pressed together like they'd been waiting to be reunited since before they even met. Her hands slid under my shirt and mine found her waist, her back, the nape of her neck, mapping her like I'd dreamed of it and now needed to make it real. The living room disappeared. The house, the wine, the jazz gone. All that remained was the heat of her breath against mine, the sound of silk falling to the floor, and the desperate honesty of skin meeting skin. She led me down the hallway, past the closed door I'd never seen inside. Until that night. She opened it, and I stepped into her world. The bedroom was soft, muted tones of cream and gray candles flickering like breath. The bed was massive, draped in linens that looked untouched. At first, we fell into it, slowly. Every touch was a conversation, every sigh a confession. We didn't rush. There was no need. It wasn't about need anymore. It was about permission, about surrender, about the raw, aching hunger that builds between two people who know exactly what they're doing and do it anyway. We didn't speak. Words would have ruined it. Only hands, only mouths, only breath. Later, after we lay tangled, barely covered her head on my chest, fingers drawing patterns on my ribs. For a long time, we didn't say anything. And then softly, "I don't do this," she whispered. I turned to look at her. Do what? This, she gestured, her fingers tracing the line of my arm. Let someone stay. I didn't answer. I didn't want to break the spell, but deep down something cracked open. Because she wasn't just talking about the night. She was talking about herself. About the room she never let anyone in before. About the mess she'd tried to keep hidden under candlelight and clean sheets. And I was inside now. Too deep to pretend I wasn't. I woke before she did. Soft morning light crept across the sheets like a secret. Emerson lay beside me, one arm flung carelessly over her pillow, hair spilled like ink across the white linen. Her breathing was slow, steady, the kind of peaceful rhythm that made the whole room feel like it didn't belong to the outside world. I stayed still for a long time, just watching, listening, trying to understand what the hell I'd walked into, or maybe what had pulled me in. Her bedroom in daylight felt different, less cinematic, more real. And that's when I saw it. The men's watch on the dresser, sitting there like it belonged. Silver band, thick, heavy. I tried to tell myself it was nothing. Maybe it was her dad's, or something she kept from a past life, like the way people hang on to old shirts from college. But something shifted in my gut. I got out of bed quietly, pulling on my jeans, stepping around the silk dress from last night that still lay like a fallen flag at the foot of the bed. I passed her closet on the way out. The door was cracked open. Inside, nestled among her carefully spaced clothes, was a jacket. Not hers. Too large. Masculine. A subtle cologne still clinging to it. My chest tightened. I slipped out of the house barefoot, holding my boots in one hand. Didn't even stop for coffee. I just drove. Windows down. Cold air slapping my face like it was trying to wake me from something I'd been sleepwalking through. Back at my apartment, I stared at myself in the mirror. Still smelled like her. Still felt like her fingertips were tracing my skin. But now there was a weight in my gut. A question I didn't know how to ask. That night I didn't text. Didn't call. Didn't use the key. But I didn't throw it away either. I couldn't. Over the next few days, we slipped back into a rhythm. Quiet nights, wine, soft jazz, and softer touches, but the edge was still there, lingering, like a shadow in the corner of the room that moved when you weren't looking. One night while we were watching an old movie on her oversized couch, I reached for her hand. She let me, but her fingers were colder than usual. She leaned her head against my shoulder and I felt it, the stillness. Not peace, not comfort. Stillness, like someone waiting for something to end. I asked her later when we were tangled in bed and the sheets smelled like skin and secrets. "Who's the watch for?" She didn't open her eyes. "My past," she said simply, and then rolled over. Her body curved away from mine like punctuation. End of sentence. That should have been my sign, but I was already in too deep. I wanted her honesty, her silence, her shape in the moonlight. I wanted the way she'd whisper my name when her hands ran across my chest, like she was learning a language she wasn't supposed to speak. I wanted the parts of her she never gave anyone else. Or maybe I just wanted to believe I was the exception. Then came the message. It was a Tuesday. I had just finished resealing bathroom tiles at a retirement condo, a job so boring it made me grateful for cracked porcelain. I sent her the usual check-in. Done for the day, want me to swing by 3 dots, then nothing, then more dots, then Jason's in town. Don't come tonight. Jason, not a friend, not an ex, a name. A name that didn't sound gone. My hands went cold. I read it again. Jason's in town. I stared at the screen, the light burning into my eyes. I didn't reply. Didn't need to. Because I finally saw the picture that had been hiding in plain sight. The reason the closet smelled like cologne. The reason the bed was too neat. The reason the watch had dust on it, but the dresser it sat on didn't. She wasn't lonely. She wasn't broken. She was married. And I was the escape hatch. The secret. The side door she slipped out of when the front one felt too tight. I dropped my phone into the passenger seat and just drove. No music, no thinking. Just the road and the roaring in my chest. When I got home, I opened the drawer where I'd kept the key. It still sat there, gleaming. Perfect. A symbol of everything I thought was special, and I threw it in the trash. Not gently, like it had burned me, like it had betrayed me. The next few days, I moved through life like a shadow. Showed up to jobs, smiled, took cash, said thank you. All while feeling like someone had scooped out my insides and replaced them with sand. Kyle noticed, asked me if I was good. I lied, said I was just tired. Didn't tell him I was unraveling from the inside out. Didn't tell him about the woman who made me believe I was seen, or the husband I'd never known about, or the version of myself I didn't recognize anymore, the one who broke his own rules just to feel chosen. Emerson didn't text again, didn't explain, didn't apologize. And honestly, that hurt more than anything else, because it meant I wasn't even worth cleaning up after. I was just another silence she could sit comfortably in. Another chapter she wouldn't reread, but I reread it. Every night, until the words turned to ash. Weeks passed, quietly the way weeds grow slow and unnoticed until suddenly they're everywhere, choking out everything good. I stopped driving by her street, stopped checking for messages I knew weren't coming. I deleted her contact, but not before staring at it one last time. Iki like some cursed little nickname I thought meant something. I worked. A lot. The kind of work that tears up your hands and your thoughts and leaves you too exhausted to feel anything. I sanded decks until my shoulders ached. Installed cabinets, mounted TVs, replaced the same leaking garbage disposal 3 times for an old woman who just wanted someone to talk to. I let myself disappear inside the noise of drills and the hum of saws. But at night when the world got still again, she came back. Her voice, her scent, the feeling of silk sliding from her shoulders, the ache of knowing I had never really been hers, not fully, and never would be. Sometimes I'd wake up in a sweat, convinced I heard her whispering my name. Sometimes I dreamed of that bedroom and the way she never let the curtains open all the way, like she was always hiding something from the light. I tried to forget her, but grief doesn't need your permission. One Saturday afternoon, I found myself sitting on the tailgate of my truck, watching the sky turn that soft shade of blue that happens right before dusk. The kind that makes you think of old love letters and things unsaid. I was drinking a beer that had gone warm. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I didn't move. Buzz again. A second message. I opened it. I thought about you today. I wanted to say I'm sorry. No name, but I knew. My stomach turned slow and sour. Another message came through. He's gone. Left last week. For real this time. I stared at the words. So simple. So quiet. So not enough. I didn't reply. Instead, I closed the message, locked my phone, and set it face down beside me. The silence between us felt wider now. Not painful, just empty. And sometimes empty is worse. A week passed, no more texts, no more appearances. I kept going. I made peace with the idea that I'd never get closure. That sometimes people enter your life not to stay, but to unearth the parts of you you didn't know existed. She didn't love me, not really. She needed me, or at least needed the version of herself she could be when I was around. And I needed to believe I mattered, that I could be more than the guy who fixed broken things. I just didn't know I'd end up one of them. But here's the part no one tells you. The wound doesn't stay raw forever. Eventually it scars. Eventually the smell of vanilla and cedar stops hurting. Eventually her name becomes just a name again. I didn't see her again for months. Then one evening I was at a hardware store grabbing replacement hinge kits, and there she was 2 aisles over. Hair shorter, jacket too big for her frame. She hadn't seen me. I watched her run her fingers over a row of cabinet pulls, expression distant like she was somewhere else entirely. I almost called her name, almost walked over. But I didn't. Because I realized I didn't need to. Not anymore. Some doors don't close with a slam. Some close with silence. Some never really open at all. And some are better left locked with the key sitting at the bottom of a trash can you'll never dig through again. I walked away. No regret, no anger, just the echo of her laugh somewhere in the back of my mind, soft and fading. By the time I reached my truck, it was gone. And for the first time in a long time, I felt light. Like maybe the version of me I lost in her hallway was still out there waiting. Whole. Honest. Free.